I'm with Salena Zito, everybody. Welcome to Walk-Ins. Welcome. This feels overdue. I am a huge fan of yours and your writing. And as we were just talking about before we started recording, I feel like you're one of the few reporters who still has boots on the ground and talks to normal people. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm a huge fan of yours, so it's just going to be like a fangirl show, right?
Oh, I
I just love
love
what you
these.
do. I love conversation and storytelling, and you do that really well. It's a real, like, American trait. And I think podcasts have brought that back alive in a very important way, sort of the way that old local radio used to do it.
It does feel that way. So I want to talk to you about everything. I want to talk to you about how are you feeling right now today about the discourse? Let's start in the present.
Okay. Here's what I think. I think there is this world of the very online, and when I say very online, I don't mean people who spend time on there and check things out, have conversations. This is a very different animal. The very online, to me, this is my own description, are the people that is their only world. And a lot of it is stoking up attention, stoking up discourse. I think my grandma used to call it pot stirrers, right? And
Yeah.
and um, and there's always pot stirrers in real life, but what people are talking about online, I guarantee you, because I spend all of my time in Western PA, Western Virginia, or West Virginia, Ohio, Michigan. Uh, the conversations online are not is what's happening in the real life, in particular when it comes to this sort of new darkness towards people that are Jewish. Like,
Mhm.
no, that's not happening.
Mhm.
Don't see it at all.
Yep. Yeah, this is really fascinating to me, and I've been talking a lot about this a lot just privately with my husband, my producer, just how it's very strange to do 3 of the things that I do. One is which spend entirely too much online observing the discourse, even if I'm not necessarily partaking in it. Obviously, I'm a part of the discourse, capital D, as that you talk about, and realizing what I've learned in the past 10 years of being online, very online, is that it's kind of 5 years ahead of normie America. And normie America is 5 years behind. And so
Yeah.
it's hard to be somewhat present because I'm also a mom of a toddler, so I am at these birthday parties with, bouncy houses in the background and have these very
Right.
normal conversations with very normal people in a suburb of Texas, and I'm constantly begging people online to go touch grass because they're
Yes.
not this is not at all what people are concerned about. Even covering stuff for Dumpster Fire, which I try to be very normie about what we cover on Dumpster Fire, even that can be challenging. Like, for instance, as you and I record, there's this big DC kind of political media drama unfolding between Olivia Nuzzi and Ryan Lizza and these reporters at
Oh, excuse me.
prestigious,
Let me get
the
my
New
popcorn while
Yorker.
you talk about that.
Oh, so exactly. But it's a very inside baseball kind of drama that if
Yes.
I took that to a birthday party or offline, very few people would have any idea what I was actually talking about. So we're
That
in a
is,
bubble because politics is not even something most Americans care about.
yeah. Absolutely. And I have always said that. I have always said I feel as though I straddle two completely different worlds, where the people that I talk to, right? And let's be honest, the people in Pennsylvania, let's just use Pennsylvania as an example. The people in Pennsylvania, very smart, we can go everywhere from working class and blue collar to guys in the steel mill to people that work in the C-suites. Um, they have no idea what's going online. I was
Yeah.
talking just to make my point, like with an exclamation point, is I was talking to a crisis management high level C-suite energy guy today for a story I'm doing on Reggie. And Reggie has been taken off the table in Pennsylvania. That's a big deal, has to do with energy, and it was a poor fit for the state. And so I'm getting data from him so I can talk about electrical rates. And I told him about the Olivia and Ryan Lizzo drama, and he lives literally on Capitol Hill and he has no idea about it. I was like,
Yeah,
you are so blessed.
that's what I say to people when they
Yeah,
haven't heard about this stuff. Yeah. There's something it's very strange too because doing comedy also gives me this insight, and because I often perform at Mothership, which is more of a tourist destination
yeah,
now in Austin, not so many locals, it ends up being me trying to take something that I think might work because it's been a joke that I made on Twitter that the online audiences are quite savvy and they're
yeah.
quite locked in, and then I'll take it to the stage and it is crickets and no one even knows what I'm talking about. It's always very humbling. I'm like, "Oh, you guys have no idea what I'm
Yeah.
talking about," and God bless you for that.
Oh yeah, they are definitely in a better place than we are
Yeah.
because of the online world. I mean, reading that story yesterday from Ryan Lizza was like watching the end of the movie Crying Game and The Sixth Sense all at the same time, and you're like, oh no, that didn't happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, except it's like no one cares outside of,
Yeah,
the political media drama, and I think it's gossip and nice, media drama
yeah,
that is a little bit of a relief from the darkness of the discourse. I don't know how I've been reading Butler, your book about being on the campaign trail with Trump, and then particularly at the rally that he was infamously, nearly killed at. And it's wild for me to think about the fact that that was only a little under,
yeah,
it was what, a year and a half ago now, not
yeah,
even.
yeah. Not even a year,
That's
15 months ago.
when I'm it's really crazy reading your book. It was like we forgot how insane that entire couple of weeks of news cycles was because
Yeah,
it was also when Biden was dropping out.
right.
And then I see how quickly we move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And what was so interesting to me is weirdly, even with Charlie Kirk, how quickly that seems to have faded out. Do you, as someone who was there and lived through this, do you have any perspective on why this is?
Well,
Is it I'm really curious about your thoughts about this actually.
I think it has a lot to do with the way my profession is structured now. Um, Before there would be long pieces, right, and investigations, and a real sort of central, um, uh, thoughtful look at why it happened and what happened. I mean, I am old enough to have been around for JFK, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, even George Wallace, all to have been shot, right? And to have
Mhm.
watched it unfold and how it was covered in the press. And then, 30 years later, how different it is covered in the press today. A lot of that has to do with social media, the constant dependence on the news industry to feed the beast, right? To make
Yep.
sure that you always have content. You always have content. That content has to be shocking with exclamation points and all caps, right? And I approach reporting very, very differently. I always have. Because I think that kind of reporting misses what's happening in the places that decide elections. And I think
Right.
it's important that we look at, and I'm just stick with Pennsylvania because I know it, but I also covered Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona. God, I forgot where I was. And so for people, there's more of a different pace outside of sort of how DC handles the news. And so Butler still lingers. People stop me all the time and talk to me about it, how much that impacted them, how curious they are about what happened. Is there more to Thomas Crooks? Is it as you wrote in the book? You know, and there's a longing for a deeper dive into things. But I also, in that book, and you've read it, you know, really got into what was happening in the state, why it was happening,
Mhm.
why people were changing, how terrible Harris's campaign was. I mean, Ro Khanna, the congressman from California, who just finished my book, said, "Your book described what happened with Kamala Harris, not her.
Yep.
You really pinpointed how badly that campaign was run and how poorly the messaging was to normal Americans, independents, Democrats, Republicans, no matter what it was. The messaging was awful, and they lost the people, both of them, both Biden and Harris. Whereas Trump,
Mhm.
and a really deep theme in my book, because I truly believe that this is a deep theme that strategists, pollsters, and politicians miss, is how important place is in people's decisions on how they vote. They overlook how much rootedness and community and connection to family means to a country where most of the people live within 100 miles of where they grew up. They aren't
Mhm.
transient. They aren't in New York. They aren't in Chicago. They aren't in DC. But the people that run our legacy media are, and they don't understand that rootedness and how that was so important in this last election.
That's something that you talk a lot about that I love in this book because it does feel like the maybe biggest disconnect in the media, whether it's obvious or not, is that you have these people who are transient and they are globe trotters and they're jet
Right.
setters and they're coast to coast, or I don't even wanna call them coastal elites because they're kind of all over the
Yeah,
place,
they're all over the
and
place.
they don't have that sense of rootedness or place. It's more a hierarchical climb to the top that concerns them. And there was really an interesting tweet that went viral over the weekend, and it was about somebody said, "Oh, these people have 9 to 5 jobs and they don't know how sad and pathetic their lives are," basically. And then people were quote tweeting it and they were saying what they did with their day, like how they watched their husband coach their kids. They went and saw their in-laws. It was very much
Yeah.
I had my birthday over the weekend. It was very much like my in-laws came over. I cooked for a friend who was pregnant, and this is the stuff that really makes life meaningful. And I was a woman who was always chasing the next high in another country or another
Right.
place. And to be able to have this grounded, simple life is the most beautiful, rewarding gift I've ever been given. And I do feel like that disconnect is really becoming more and more apparent in our politics.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, it's not just in legacy media that this has happened. What has caused this conservative populist coalition to form, right? It actually happened before. Trump didn't cause it.
Mhm.
He understood it and tapped into it. He is the result of it. But it started happening about 2004, 2006, where our cultural curators, so what do I mean by that? The corporations, institutions, academia, Hollywood, legacy media, right? You know, even like the NFL, right? They're all located and their boardrooms are located in the super zip codes of our country where there's a concentration of wealth and power, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
the five counties that surround DC, or the counties that surround New York, right? This is where our powerful are. And this is where the decision makers are. So they're very disconnected from the people that they want to sell seats to, that they want to get their kids to go to their college, that they want to buy their products, that they want to read their news. And the pressure from them to be the pressure from our cultural curators to the people in the middle of the country are like, back off. You don't know us. These are Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. Started to unravel in 2006,
Mhm.
and people didn't understand what was happening, but it had to do with all of our cultural curators, and that nobody thought what was impacting consumers and parents was going to impact our politics. Seems to me very short-sighted, because culture and politics, they are all sort of intertwined. And so what do I mean about, like, a good example of our cultural curators in corporations? Let's think about Hoover vacuum cleaners. Mr. Hoover lived 3 blocks from his factory in Canton, Ohio. He knew everybody that worked there. He went to church with them every Sunday. His wife was on the school board, and he knew who his customers were. He was connected to what he was making and what he was selling. Today, Hoover's made in Hong Kong. And
Mhm.
nobody knows who owns it. It's like a group of venture capitalists, right? There's no cultural connection. And where do we see that most blatantly? We saw it with the NFL, with Colin Kaepernick. Where are their headquarters? Well, Park Avenue, New York. What's that got in common with the guy who has a man cave, who paints his face black and gold every year, that's a Steeler fan? Not that much, right? So
Right.
they make a decision that impacts if they get invited to a cocktail party, but they don't realize that the decision that they're making impacts their fan base. They lost, I think, 16% of their viewership the first year of kneeling at the games, and I think it was an additional 14% the following year. Same with Budweiser. They used to have their headquarters in St. Louis for their PR. Well, now it's in Los Angeles, and they made the biggest boneheaded decision ever. So that's what I mean by, it was all of our cultural curators that did this, and eventually it impacted our politics.
Do you think have these places recovered? I know Disney's another great example. Has Budweiser recovered? Has the NFL recovered their viewership? Is it gone and it never came back? I know
No,
Budweiser, the last time I checked, hadn't recovered.
yeah, Budweiser, I don't know that that ever recovers.
Mm,
And here's the thing about Budweiser. People think, oh, it's because these people are transphobic. No, it's not. It has everything to do with, you betrayed us. We have been your customers since we were not even old enough to drink, right? And you betrayed us. So it's more that, it's a more emotional disconnect. The NFL has done a much better job. They
mhm.
have brought back a much more patriotic theme. You see that with their halftime, not the Super Bowl. I don't know what they're doing with the Super Bowl, but I never have. I mean, when the Steelers went to the Super Bowl for the first time in the 1970s, it was two college bands that played, and we loved
Right.
it. I don't know why we have to have this thing, right?
Yeah.
But the NFL's done a much better job of reaching out and getting better connected with their fans. Budweiser is still struggling.
Yeah, the feeling of betrayal is something I really, really relate to, particularly with entertainment. I remember feeling that very deeply in 2016. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for
Hmm.
Hillary in 2016,
Hmm.
and I was, one of the p I wasn't I don't think I wasn't like, I couldn't stand him, but I wasn't, like, as bad as some of my friends.
Right.
And and I remember the Saturday Night Live where they played Alleluia and it felt like a funeral. And I was like, "What the F is this?" This
Right.
is a betrayal of it is an abdication of your duty, as far as I'm concerned, which is to entertain the masses, not 50% of the masses. And part of this is the stratification of all of our media, the fact that you can have personalized everything, the fact that everything is flattering you constantly. We all have our individual devices, our individual ringtones. There's
Right.
no this is also just something that's happened culturally, and I think obviously entertainment was going to reflect that, but these older
Yeah.
institutions that I felt their duty was to kind of hold the line, they did
Yeah.
not hold the line at all, when Americans kind of needed it
Yes.
most. I'm like, "You
Yeah.
know that a large percentage of America is celebrating right now, and you guys are out here acting like it's a funeral." That's
I
crazy to me.
it's so crazy. And to your point about Hollywood, I grew up loving Ken Burns' historical productions. Right, the
Mhm.
Civil War, amazing. The one
Prohibition.
on baseball, amazing. The one on Prohibition, amazing. And if you read the book, you find out that Trump is not the only president that was shot in Butler. So my love of the Revolutionary War, especially from Western Pennsylvania, where everyone in Western Pennsylvania grew up with a PhD in Revolutionary War because so many things happened here. I
I love
so
the
want to
opening to your book.
watch. Oh, I so want to watch his thing on the Revolutionary War, but I'm so skeptical given how much of a tirade he's gone on about Trump in interviews. I'm like, how can I trust you to have made this in a way that doesn't have some sort of underlying gripe associated with?
There seems to be even people who are diehard supporters of Trump. I don't know if they're preparing for life post-Trump or what this new weird realignment is, but what are you hearing on the ground? How do people who voted for Trump feel about him?
They love him. Nothing's changed. They look at Massey. Well, they've always looked at Massey with skepticism, right? Um, and MTG, I've always thought that her popularity was a very online popularity. She was always going to be popular in her state because it's a really not in her state, her district.
Right.
And so, but if you and I did, I went around and asked the average person, like, whatever, she's an opportunist. I mean, that,
Mhm.
people are much smarter than we give them credit for, right?
This
Because they deal with people like this in their daily lives, right? Where someone's their friend, I got you back, I'm with you. And they're like, oh, well, if I go in this direction, I might be better off.
Mhm, mhm. This is something that's so fascinating to me about the paradox of Americans, and I
Yeah.
joke about this all the time on Dumpster Fire. I'm like, "Oh, America, how can you be so stupid and so smart at the same time?" In some ways, we are not educated, we get math problems wrong, but collectively, there's a very I don't know, the kind of normie instinct
Yeah.
is somewhat reliable to me.
Yeah. Because we've always had to survive things. We
Mhm.
Americans are survivors, for the most part. And they're a hardy stock. And Pennsylvania, 62% of people didn't go to college, right? That doesn't make them not smart.
Yeah.
And more often than not, I have found people that didn't go to college have a lot more street sense than people that did.
When I drove around America, when I first started my website in 2005, 2006, I just took I was like, I'm not going to wait for the internet to come to me. I'm going to go to the people and try and promote it and go on a tour of America. And I ended up in Oklahoma for a while on a farm. And I was, I was just like, "These are the people who are gonna survive when the shit hits the fan." They
Yeah,
know it was such a huge difference. Nothing really reflected this difference more to me than the 2 massive natural disasters we had in different states in the past year, where we had the horrific fires in California, and then you had these massive floods in Texas, and in Texas, people were out with their own, you know, huge all the trucks and all that heavy
yep,
machinery that they knew how to operate, that they had on their land and on their property, and they were driving it, and they were moving trees, and they had people. It
yep,
was like an instant community response in Texas, and granted, with the fires, it was slightly different because fire whatever, but there just wasn't that same community sensibility of knowing what to do at all in a kind of emergency. And that was something I always perceived just driving around America, that say what you will about who's smart and the coastal elites and whatnot. I would rather be around the people who know how to use their heavy machinery and have guns to defend themselves
yep,
than people who are kind of going to throw up their hands and wait for the government to come. Because I do think you're right in the sense that the normie American has and this does come from that sense of place. No one is coming other than your very local community.
yep,
They
yep.
don't they don't or they don't expect anyone to come. I mean,
No, they
that's been
don't.
my experience of it.
Yeah, they're very resilient. You know, I covered the aftermath of Hurricane Helene last year in Appalachia, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia. It lingered the most in North Carolina.
Mhm.
And you know, while they needed FEMA for certain things, these people like came together and like, all right, let's go, let's roll, let's take care of this. I've seen that in floods in Kentucky, in West Virginia. I've seen that in natural disasters that I've covered in East Palestine, Ohio, right? Like people just, they have their neighbors back. It might be someone you only ever say hi to 3 times a week when you're going to work. Nonetheless, that place, that community is a social fabric that a lot of people take for granted. But people, you know, in the middle of the country, like, I know that guy's going to have my back if, you know, if I need help.
You've all heard me screaming women for years now, and I'm a big advocate for women in general and women's health in particular. That's why I love Quest's line of medical tests specifically focused on women's health issues. They offer a basic women's health profile test that gives you a snapshot of your current health and wellness, women's hormone tests designed to identify imbalances associated with various health conditions, and specific tests for fertility, thyroid function, and even your menopause stage. This is all such important knowledge for women to have because it can affect the way you work out. It can affect what you should be eating. And just now, they're starting to really realize how much all of these hormones play into us losing weight, keeping bone density. All of this information is so important to you. Your results are delivered online quickly and discreetly, and you get all of this information without a doctor's visit. So prioritize your health and visit questhealth.com today. Use the code WALKINS25 to get 25% off and find answers to the multitude of health questions you may have. That's questhealth.com and use the code WALKINS25 for 25% off. Link in the description below. It's so wild to me too that you were just feet from the
Yeah.
podium in Butler. Is there one sensory detail that you can't forget?
So I wasn't supposed to be there. Like nothing that happened that day I was supposed to be at. I was supposed to interview him 5 minutes before, and that was that. And it went back and forth, and then I was gonna, you know, interview him after, and then I was gonna fly with him to Bedminster, right? So it was all over the place. And the one thing that struck me after the shoot, the reason I ended up right by him was because 5 minutes before he went on the stage, he asked for me and my daughter, who's the photographer who did the cover of the book, was
Mhm.
he wanted to say hi. And so I thought I had to interview him back there. So we go like rushing back. It's like 90,000 degrees, right? We're carrying all this equipment. We go back behind the stage, and I ask Michelle Picard, who was the campaign advance guy, where are we doing this interview? He goes, "Oh no, no, he just wanted to say hi to you." And I was like, okay. And he does what he always does. I just interviewed him the other day in the Oval Office. I don't if people didn't see my grandkids with him. I have my 4 little grandkids. Please look at the top of my Twitter page. It's at Zito Salena. My little grandson, 3 years old, Rocco, he's giving the kids coins, and Rocco says, "What's your name?" And Trump looks at him and says, "My name is Donald." Like, he's really good with people. So, anyways, I go back, I
Mhm.
say hi to him. At this point, they can't get us back to the riser. So that's why we end up in the buffer. And that's why we were just right
Um,
at his feet. And I let people read the book. But what struck me most about that day was going down. They kept me and my daughter, my son-in-law, behind in a secure area. I think initially they thought we were shot because I was on the ground. Oh, I was only on the ground because the agent took me down because I would kept working. Um, but
yeah.
what struck me most that day, and it's something that really always gets to me emotionally when I see people call Trump voters dumb and stupid and racist and whatever word they want to throw out, is they didn't let us out for an hour. And this was on a farm field, this event. So you had to like sort of climb, and this is Appalachia, right? You had to climb a hill to get down to where all the cars were parked. It's an hour and a half after the shooting. They didn't let anybody leave. And there's 50,000 people there. So there's at least 15,000 cars, right? Probably more, but let's just say there's 2 to 3 people in a car. They're all there. Nobody's blowing a horn. Nobody's screaming. Nobody's, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. They're all hugging each other. They're singing. They're sharing food. They're praying. And I remember being so overwhelmed with not only pride that everyone was reacting in this very grace a way a moment of grace, but it also
Mhm.
made me really angry too, because I get really angry when my profession, politicians call Trump voters deplorable or racist or whatever the word is, right, of the day, right? Extremist,
Mhm.
garbage, Biden's famous garbage thing. And I remember thinking, y'all should see this because this is who these people are. And that I know that has nothing to do with like sensory or danger, because there was no sense of that
Mhm.
whatsoever. But to me, that moment still is there. I can see it as I'm talking about it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting what sticks from those moments when we're under duress and it's chaotic, and it sounds like that was the thing that was the most surprising to me was that it was not as chaotic as I would have
No
expected.
chaos.
It wasn't
And
like there could have been a stampede. I mean, it could have been so much worse than how orderly and calm it actually was, which again, it's a testament to, I think, the hardiness of American people. But it it was shocking to me that wasn't more of a chaotic fallout from the initial shooting. And even I've said this, even people have argued with me and they've said, no, he's a showboat, and that is,
yeah,
and but I think his presence of mind to stand up and let people know that he was okay, because there was that moment where you were like, "Oh, shit,
yeah,
is this
yeah,
guy dead?" And
yeah.
or mortally wounded, and if he wasn't, oh, I was like, "Can you imagine the chaos in this country in the hours we would have been waiting to know if he was alive or dead?"
It would have been
It
really bad. Yeah.
it
And
would have been bad.
he called me the next morning. In fact, he called me 7 times that the next day. And we talked. It was very emotional. It's all, I won't give it away. People can read it in the book. It's really, really
Mhm, mhm.
compelling. But one of the last question I asked him was, he's getting on the plane. I hear him walking. He's got the phone in his hand. And he says to me, I said to him, I said, Mr. President, can I just ask you one thing? And none of our conversations were on the record, because I could tell he just needed to talk to someone who was there. And I said,
Yeah.
Mr. President, can I please ask you this on the record? And he said, sure. I said, why did you say fight, fight, fight? He goes, oh, that's easy. And remember, this is like less than 24 hours later. He said, I had an obligation as a president to show strength because I am a symbol of the entire country. He said,
Mm.
I had to represent in that moment our resilience, our grit, our history of not backing down. And if we get knocked down, we get back up. That was my job as a president. I wasn't Donald Trump in that moment, he said. At that moment, I was every president of the United States. I represented everyone in our country. And he said, and when I think about it, and again, it's 24 hours later, he goes, what if they took me off on a stretcher?
Yeah.
Imagine how that would have impacted people that were there. Imagine how that would have impacted people watching. He goes, nah, I had to do that.
Yeah. If the shooting hadn't happened, does your analysis of how the Heartland vote, unfolds change?
No, he was always going to, there's a moment in February 2023 where I knew it was over, and it hadn't even started. He was down in the polls. By the way, just days before I wrote this story, he got mad at me on Twitter, or no, Truth. He called me fake news reporter, Salena Zito, because I interviewed Ron DeSantis in Florida. But as I was coming back home, East Palestine blows up, right? My grandparents
Mhm.
are from East Palestine. I live 60 miles away, and on a mountain, and I could see the explosion. Like,
Yep.
that's how big it was. When
Mhm.
he decided to show up in East Palestine, I wrote that day. I said, and people need to remember, at that time he was down in the polls to Ron DeSantis. This is February 2023. The day before, a couple days before he went there, he was down in the polls in the first New Hampshire primary to DeSantis. He goes there. He's got freaking galoshes on, a trench coat. It is like typical Appalachian, like gray, sleet, rain weather. And he just walks around town. He comes rolling in with two 18 wheelers filled with water. There's Trump water because it's Trump. He buys all the first responders McDonald's. And I said, you know what? If he turns this around, if this turns around, this is the moment it happened. Because East
Mm.
Palestine isn't just East Palestine. East Palestine politically didn't matter. He was always going to win Ohio no matter what. Um, East Palestine matters because it's like the song Allentown, right, by Billy Joel, where
Mhm.
everyone in the country sang to that song, and not everyone in the country lived in Allentown, and they certainly had not even been there. But it was a symbol of how people felt about jobs going away, right? This is the
Yep.
early 80s. Jobs going away, their towns falling apart, people moving away. And that served as the symbol for the death of the steel manufacturing industry. Well, East Palestine served as a symbol of all of our towns across the country that get left behind, right? By
Mhm.
politicians, by big government, by corporations, whoever has sold them out. And he showed up, and I'm like, I knew it was over then. I wrote
What's
that. I wrote it was over then.
what's the update with the town now? Or how are the people there doing? Has there been any fallout? Are they sick? I remember I was
Um,
on Rogan talking to screaming about this actually when it was
yeah,
happening. I was like, "There's like 2 people covering this. It's crazy."
yeah, that was me. One of them was
Yeah.
me. I mean, I was there every day, and trust me, I came home with headaches. It was awful.
Mm.
Like, it was really awful. There's some things that are gonna be happening soon that I can't talk about, but they'll be coming out. But the president, I will put it this way, the president will be taking very good care of that town.
Mhm. Okay.
I just
And
interviewed him.
okay. Yeah, I wondered how the people were doing there, how the recovery's been. It doesn't I feel like they're we again, it's the problem of the news cycles is that something happens, there's not really much follow-up. Even this week, we just heard that there was, Crooks was in a
Yeah.
kinda they, them, and in a furry community online, and now we're approaching a year and a half later, and now this is a second person who's now been Charlie Kirk's assassination, his murderer was part of this. You would it One of my questions is that is this not covered in the way that it might be covered because these are conservatives or because they're GOP or
Oh,
Republicans?
yeah. I wish I didn't say yes to that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't even wanna
Yeah,
ask
and it
the
makes me
question.
sad. Like, it makes me
Mhm.
really sad. I cover everybody. I've
Yeah,
interviewed every president and vice president since the turn of the century, as well as everyone that's ever run. That's my job. I just always, the reason people associate me a lot with Trump is I always understood this coalition because of where geography of where I live, right? And it and there in my profession there is a bias. Now, you cannot deny the bias towards conservatives. You cannot deny it. Uh,
mhm.
and 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 so the detail to which this was covered is sad. It's absolutely sad.
Yeah, it feels very glossed over, and even the Charlie Kirk stuff, it's, like, gone out of I can't imagine that if there were and again, I hate to even say this, but if there were 2 Dem if 1 Democratic effective I don't even know who the Charlie Kirk of the left would be considered because he seemed like he was just this kind of one-man operation
Yeah.
who was insanely effective and really moved people, and let's say, like, Obama, I don't know if these people had been one president had been shot at and then another person had been killed, it feels like it would be a much bigger deal about the fact that the 2 people who did this came from the same kind of community, that there's,
Yeah.
for all the talk about online radicalization, it feels like we're missing a big part of that story, and it's frustrating to me to and feels somewhat defeating to see that I don't know that if this stuff doesn't make it better, I don't know that anything will.
Trying to cover, he's from my backyard. To try to even get in any information about him was almost impossible. Uh, the
Mhm,
house, the house was had cameras all over it. Um, the neighbors didn't know them. The interview that he did with the FBI, the father did, it's in the book.
mhm,
He clearly had a psychotic break in and around November of 2023. And his father says that. But they also lawyered up. They didn't answer the door, they didn't answer the phone. There was no penetrating into that family life, at least for me, right? It
yeah,
wasn't for a lack of trying.
yeah,
I don't have the kinds of FBI sources. That's sort of not um my expertise. But
mhm.
I tried very hard to try to piece together in the book what I could about this kid.
How did you avoid being the story when your proximity gives you such unusual access and you're right how do you manage to keep that distance as a reporter?
Well, I don't want to be a story, and I hate attention. So, so I tend, you know, when I went, I'm old. I'm 66. So when I went into journalism, like reporters were someone you never saw, right? Other than if
Yeah,
you saw their microphone go up, right? So I went into this like in a different era. So attention is always something I somewhat have a challenge with. And you know, I wrote the story after it happened, and I did a little bit of press the next day just because I thought it was important that people understood what happened because I was so close, right? I love history. I've read so many witness to history books. So I knew, I mean, and I kept working. So that the only reason I ended up on the ground is because I was tackled. I was still standing there recording. I have everything recorded,
that's
right?
crazy.
But you know, I try to just keep my head down. I wrote the book. I kept writing. I can't believe I wrote 62, you know, 262 words in 3 minutes in three months, right? While still covering an election. But I don't know. I just try to avoid the limelight, you know.
Yeah.
It's just not it's not my thing.
When
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. It's so weird because in our field now, you kind of need attention to get attention to your
Yeah.
work, and it's like the incentives are just so bad for reporters to do a good job at reporting first.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
You've logged hundreds of thousands of miles, and this is why I love your reporting so much. What do road miles reveal that polling miss?
Place. You know,
Place.
place. It comes down to place. That sounds so simple, right? I don't. So, if your listeners don't know, I don't fly. Not because I don't like it, although I find it very annoying to go to an airport today. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. I don't take the interstate. I don't take, you know, the turnpike. I only take back roads, either old U.S. routes or state routes, or just go through neighborhoods. That's where you can see visually how a community is doing. Oh, this community's on
Mhm.
an upswing. Oh, this community's on a downward trajectory, right? And I go to things where people gather and get to know a community long before I start writing about them. And that taught me in 2006 that the Democrats were going to win the House and the Senate, but it had nothing to do with people liking Democrats again. It had everything to do with people being mad at Republicans. That to me,
Mhm.
2006 to me is the. I remember writing this in 2006 after the midterm and the Republicans got wiped out. I remember writing, you guys, this isn't about people loving Democrats. They actually picked Democrats that are conservative to run, and they won. This is about people being unhappy with the establishment in both parties. And if we don't pay attention to this, we're going to have a populist election in 16 years. I mean, in 10 years. Now, I thought it would be the Democrats that would do that. No, it was Republicans that did it.
But was a
But going,
Democrat.
yeah, yeah, right. So I
I
thought
mean,
it would be
it's
like,
interesting, it feels that way right now to me,
yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit. The
I don't know. You know what plays in New York does not play in Peoria or Pittsburgh. Well,
Mhm.
I shouldn't say Pittsburgh because you know Pittsburgh elected, you know, three people that were members of the DSA. But then again, it's a primary, and Pittsburgh is mostly Democrats. So you have to think about places where elections are decided. So who tells us? What tells us that? It's Pennsylvania, basically, but it's
Mm.
specifically the county of Erie. Go to Erie County and just sit there, and you'll understand what will happen in 3 years.
So what's your feeling, when do the primaries start for the presidential election?
The first primary will be in January of 2028. But they'll
Okay.
start running next November, right after the midterms. That's when they'll hit New Hampshire and Iowa and declare their candidacies.
Okay,
I am
okay.
I am not convinced that Republicans lose when it comes to the House. It's going to be like either two-person majority on the left or two-person majority on the right if it was held today, right?
Okay.
And the Democrats' biggest challenge is they've gone too far left for the most of the country. They've just gone
Mhm.
off the rails, and that's the thing that saves the Republicans.
Right.
And so I'm not convinced I don't see signs of a wave yet. That doesn't mean there won't be one. Sometimes it takes a while, but right now I think the Democrats need a better course correction. Most voters, left or right, I mean Democrat or Republican, are kind of down the middle, and they don't understand that. They're they're not for all these radical things that the Democrats want to do. I mean, city run government run supermarkets?
Yeah.
I don't think so. That
Even the
doesn't work. It just
25
doesn't work.
elections?
Pardon?
Yeah, yeah. Even the 2025 elections don't make you think maybe there's a blue wave coming in 2026?
That was always going to happen. Now, the only
Yeah,
disappointing one is Jay Jones. That was repulsive
yeah,
and a little bit sick what he texted. But that was, I mean, you this has been like a 40-year pattern in in New Jersey and Virginia. They always vote the opposite of who's in the White House. There was
right.
not going to be anything that changed that.
Mhm,
Not
mhm.
anything at all. And in Virginia and New Jersey, suburban Democrat women are not voting for Trump.
Right.
Period. Period.
Who do you think is what do you think politics and the GOP looks like post-Trump?
Oh, I think obviously JD Vance, Marco Rubio. I think these
Mhm,
are young, vibrant voices for the conservative populist movement. You have sort of the one step older, but still very vibrant, like of Glenn Youngkin, and Ted Cruz. These guys are very very good advocates for the conservative populist movement.
yeah, I feel like the left is getting hip to the populism. I mean,
They
they already
are,
were with
but that's
Bernie.
yeah, but their populism really impacts your pocketbook.
Mhm,
One of the things
yeah,
that make young people become conservatives, it used to be taxes. Right now, it's just hip and cool and fun to be a conservative. And since this is in the book, the amount of young people I kept reporting, like, guys, y'all aren't paying attention. There are a lot of
mhm,
young people at these events. And a lot of that
mhm,
had to do with Charlie. And it's so sad. I was messaging with him that I didn't realize this to the other day. He and I were messaging back and forth the day he died.
wow,
Um, but what I have seen, and I've reported this, people can just, check out my work, is the resurgence towards faith among young people since his death. I've gone to
mm,
5 revivals with young people. I have my parish is packed every Sunday to the point where I have to stand outside at times, which is not cool because a lot of people don't know this, but I spent the last 10 weeks not allowed to walk because I
I
broke my
know.
leg. Like broke my leg really bad. And it was a challenge to go to these events, but I see something very there is what's the word, awakening going on with young people.
Mhm,
And while we see what I don't know what that word, that GROYPERS, I don't know how to pronounce that. How do people pronounce that?
the Groypers?
Is that I don't know. I've never
I
heard
think
anybody say
so.
it out loud. um,
Yeah, Groypers,
I
I
don't.
believe.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't know one if I met one. I don't know people
Mm,
that know them. So So I see, I didn't forget what the question is now. But I just have seen this surgence of young people at religious events that makes me pay attention because it's telling me something, and it's telling me
Mm.
something that my profession is missing. Now maybe it's because they don't go to church, I don't know, but I see it, I experience it. I see these new like Bible studies popping up with young people in the area. So I'm very much paying attention to that.
Yeah, that's something I'm really fascinated by anecdotally. Just, in my friend groups and people that I know, people are, even personally, just this desire to go back to church
Yeah,
after Charlie in particular, although I think it had already started for me before
yeah,
Charlie. Charlie wa it's for a lot of people, I've heard a very similar thing. It was something they'd been kicking around and feeling, and then for some reason, that moment with Charlie was the moment that they were like, "No, it's time. I've gotta go to church." And they're saying that reporting back the same thing, that their churches are packed, and
yeah.
it's weird because you'll hear that that's not the case and there isn't this big resurgence, but I don't know how to what to trust. I generally trust my eyes and my ears, but it is always I've learned kind of the hard way that I thought for sure there was a red wave coming, and I said this on Rogan, and it didn't come. It was during the midterms, but I was just late. It was like I was seeing something happening, and I thought it would come in
Yeah,
the midterms, and it actually ended up coming in 2024. It did not come in 2022. And people were like, "Oh, you guys were wrong," and we were wrong. I thought it was going to be just even Rogan said I thought it was like when the elevator doors open in The Shining, but it just
right.
had it's just different. It didn't happen until 2024, and this was when I realized that anecdotally, I how do you balance that? How do you trust what you're seeing anecdotally versus recognizing that you're in a bubble versus realizing that it might be behind what you're seeing at the polls and at and what people are reporting? How do you manage to siphon through all of those different information buckets?
So I do a couple different things. Gallup has this rolling poll on American life, American attitudes. There's like 80,000 people in it every day. There, and they talk about American life. And so culturally, I'm able to pick up on where people are going. Right? It's not a
Mm,
political poll. It's all about American life and what's on people's minds. That has been part of my guiding light, getting out on the road and talking to people, but mostly listening to people, right? And then listening to what politicians are talking about. I think in 2022, Trump wasn't, and the party wasn't as aspirational as it
mhm,
was by 2024. They weren't talking about, oh, we're all part of something bigger than self and let's get together and do that. It was more about being mad and angry, and rightfully so. However, people respond to take me in a better place, right? Make me part of something bigger than self, right?
mhm.
It's been a trait in American life since before we were in a country. And so they did, it was more like, to me, like the airing of the grievances. What was that called? Festivus, right? I think I said that. And so they were coming short on the mark about what people wanted. They didn't understand that. Um, but you started to see that change with Trump beginning at East Palestine. Like, to me, that's like the pivotal moment that changed for everything for Republicans. Like, we're going to show up for you. We're going to make sure you're okay. And you matter. Everything changed in that moment. The potential was there in 2022, but they kind of missed it because the message didn't get them. Oh, they could have had it. Um maybe it's better they didn't.
Right.
And maybe it's better than that we didn't. Maybe I personally think that my U.S. senators, McCormick and Fetterman, are sort of the best kind of senators to have for the country because they balance each other, they work together, and there's a little bit of everything with both of them. So
Yeah.
maybe McCormick or Oz wasn't supposed to win, right? You always start to
Mhm.
think like everything happens for a reason. Oz there, a guy like passed out in the White House the other day. Well, if he hadn't been there, what would have happened to that guy? Right? And so
Yeah.
you start thinking about that. And maybe 2022 wasn't supposed to be that moment. You sometimes, and we know this in our personal lives, look, we need to get slapped and learn a lesson. And I think that's
I
what
also
2022 was.
Yeah, looking back too, and we've been talking to a lot of people kind of decompressing the from COVID. I think people were really just this was right when people were somewhat coming out of the 2 COVID
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And so I do, especially if you were in these cities and states that were heavily locked down, like I was in Los Angeles, I think we were still locked down and
Oh
to a
gosh, I'm
certain
so sorry.
point. And so there was it I think, like, a lot of Americans I was talking to my sister about this just yesterday, how she was having a conversation with somebody at hockey, and they were talking about something that happened during COVID, and they were nurses, and, like, they all started talking about this, and they were getting emotional, and they were like, "We haven't even talked about this." Everybody just kind of moved on past it because, A, I
Yeah.
think it was traumatic for the
Yeah.
country and for people, but nobody's really, I think in 2022 in particular, people were really just like putting their heads up and going like, "What the F just happened?"
Yeah.
Trying to get
You're
back to
right.
some sense of normalcy. And then after everything being shut down and being working from home, going back to work, having schools opening, now you're playing catch up and having to turn modern life is very busy. This is what I try to explain to young people who are very engaged in the online spaces and the politics and whatnot. I'm like, do you know how busy the average parent of more than one child is?
Yeah.
In particular, I have one and we're busy, but you've got aging parents, you've got young kids. Everybody I know spends all weekend driving around from one activity
Yeah.
to the next for their kids. It is so you're trying to keep your lawn looking nice because you care about these things. It's just like a very, very busy existence. They don't have
Yeah.
time to be lost in this kind of daily up and down dramatics of that the very online
Yeah.
shenanigans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my daughter is 39 and she has 4 kids,
Yeah,
between the ages of 3 and 8.
that's
and
crazy.
she's at I am blessed to live right by her, so I go to a lot of those events because that's what I did with her and her brother when they were growing up, right?
Yeah.
And we have that, I have work, I have travel, I have Sunday dinner with my parents every Sunday. My whole family goes to my parents for pasta, right? And the lawn and the house and like everything, and trying to keep yourself healthy, trying not to break your leg. Um,
Yeah. Trying to recover from breaking
trying
your
to
leg.
recover, but I was really cranky. I was
I
I'm usually a
bet.
pretty happy person. I was not happy. Um, so yeah, our lives are really, really busy, but that's healthy, right?
Yeah.
It is healthy
Mhm.
to be busy because what COVID did to us on so many levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, there are plenty of people that have just like blocked that life part of their life out because it was
Completely.
so traumatic. They can't
Mhm.
relive it. That's so traumatic. What we did to our lives, what we did to our families, how we've lost parents, what we did to our kids, everything. And I very rarely make predictions. I will say that will never happen again. It will never. People will not ever let that happen again.
Yeah, I think that's why I thought that 2022 would be more of a referendum on a lot of those lockdown politics, and then I came to the awareness that this was my own bubble, and I was interpreting things through my own experience, which was that this was draconian and wrong and, overblown, and it hurt a lot of people, and a lot of people were like, "No, that was good. The government did the right thing."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so that was I was l it's always very I don't know, I find being in journalism and being someone who talks to people and tries to see trends and experience, um, which way the wind is blowing in America, it's very I find it to be a never-ending process of being humbled over and over
yes,
again, just
yes,
eating humble pie on a
yeah,
regular basis.
yeah,
And right now it feels like the general sense to me is low level anxiety, but there's no real pinpointing why. I have
yeah,
my own feelings about why. I think there have been many political assassinations. But we've been talking to a lot of people about AI, and
yeah,
our last guest on Real America was talking about how there really hasn't been this kind of revolutionary force in humanity since the printing press, and that
yeah,
it caused all kinds of chaos and upheaval and witch hunts and pogroms and not great things, but before it kind of settled in and got good, and it does feel that way with AI. What is your sense about AI with the people? Do they talk about it?
well, what we're in a moment very similar to the Industrial Revolution, except it's the
Mhm.
technological revolution. And if you look at America, first just look at American politics at that time. We went every 4 years we had a different president. Every every 2 years, we had like 100 seat swings in Congress, right? And
Mhm.
which peaked with a populist um, uh, the first populist election between McKinley and oh my god, I'm going to forget his name. Oh, why can't I think of his name? William Jennings Bryan. Sorry about that. And so that's what the industrial revolution did, right? We went from an agricultural society living mostly in the middle of the country to moving to the cities. And it caused great upheaval, and we're in a very similar situation. AI is going to change everything, just in the way that manufacturing and industry changed us back then. Before, a factory could only be open when the lights were on. Now factories can be open, and then factories are open all the time. And so AI hits different where I live. Here's why. It is most of data AI centers are going to be built in places like Western Pennsylvania, and
Yep.
Texas, where there is going to be these massive data power centers built. Well, they have to be built by someone, right?
Mhm.
And it takes like about 5 to 10,000 people to build these centers, and it takes about 5 to 10 years to build them. They have to have an energy supply. That takes an additional, anywhere from 500 to 5,000 people to work at those energy facilities, whether it is natural gas, oil, coal, or nuclear. And
Mhm.
then it takes sort of the intellect part of this event. So you have universities, right, that have these hubs that grow out of them from the intellectual part of it, the computers, the professionals, right, the computer scientists. So geologists, meteorologists, labor, welders, and C-suite people are all going to benefit in places like Texas, in places like Pennsylvania, right? But who's going to get hit hardest? It's like a flip, right? It's the white collar worker. So there's
Yeah.
more of an anxiety among the white collar worker as opposed to places where you and I live.
Yep. Yep.
So
It does.
it's not that anxiety here. It's like jobs, right? I
Right.
mean, Trump was just here in July, and they got a $90 billion investment of coming to an AI facility that had followed a $10 billion investment just down the road, that followed $100 billion investment across the state, that followed a $70 billion investment from Nippon into US Steel to build this. So it's a very different kind of feeling here as opposed to white collar world.
Yes. But they're the ones who are, a
So
lot
it's like
of
a
the people.
reversal.
Yeah, and maybe that's why why it feels very strange, because I'm perceiving it from
Yeah,
the media perspective, where there is this, where there that this is a class that's anxious, except on the ground it feels people are anxious about finances. Healthcare has
yeah,
gone up, pretty
yeah,
massively, and electricity's going up, and so I see a lot of the economic insecurity still from
right.
everyone. It's really all people are talking about still. So I do worry that if no one can solve that problem and give some Americans relief, then it's just gonna keep, ping-ponging through populists.
Yeah,
But, um, it doesn't
absolutely.
seem as there does seem to be more in Texas. We're building,
Right.
just constantly building.
Building.
There's just
Right.
building everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
that's happening in the
there's
middle of the country, right?
yeah.
So there's a and I remember when AI first started to roll out and journalists were using it. I'm like, you guys, you should not use that. You should never use that. The thing we have is originality, right? And getting out there and talking to people and telling a story. You're just going to like AI yourself out of a job.
Yep. Well, they should have listened to you. Where are you going next?
So where am I going next? So usually I take the month of my I only take my vacation once a year. And it's usually all of December. So I can do all my family Christmas stuff and all my stuff with my kids and my
Oh,
grandkids.
fun.
But I just did an interview with the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, to go with my. I have a story out tomorrow in the Washington Post. Um, Shocker, they hired me, uh, and talk to both the head of U.S. Steel and Ford about tariffs and the impact and Trump changing his mind, and how they're really good with that, which is very different than the narrative that people expect. But he invited me to go and up to do a tour of the plant, and I'm like, I'm all in. I also am going bear hunting at bear camp. That's coming out next week. So yeah, I mean, if I'm going to write about it, I'm going to do it. So I've
That's
been
so
1,200
cool.
feet under the ground in a coal mine. I've worked in a steel mill. Uh, Whatever it is, if I don't immerse myself in it, then I don't feel like I talk about it legitimately.
Yeah, you are I mean, everyone should just follow you, because now I ask people where they get their news and who they follow, and it
Uh-huh.
seems like it's less about organizations and more about reporters that you trust, and
Yeah.
you're one of those people that has been
Oh,
my
thank
kind
you,
of
people.
guiding light, and in terms of just looking for some, there's not many alternative perspectives on what's actually happening on the ground in the Heartland in particular. So with normies, just talking to normies. I just don't
Yeah.
think that. And now with like online bots and outside influences and people astroturfing things, I don't think you can look at a lot of these influencers and say, that their, um, popularity is representative, which is
Yeah.
also an interesting time.
I have a really good, very emotional piece today looking at Steve Liscombe. He was a Marine. He earned a Purple Heart. He was a father. He was a son. He was a man of faith. He was a husband. He was a coal miner, and he evacuated all of his guys out of a mine the other day, but he didn't make it out. And I
Mm.
think it's really important. What I've learned, I've been in several mines. What I've learned about the industry is that they view what they do as patriotic. And so
Mhm.
why? Well, why do they think of it's patriotic? Well, they fuel your life. And I had a piece that followed a piece of coal that went from the long wall all the way onto the onto the train, onto the barge, and out to the coal-fired power plant. And within 7 hours, it was lighting a building and lighting a house. And
Wow.
so they look at they make your lives better. They make our country more secure, because they build the steel that builds whatever we need to keep our country safe. It's national security. And so I think we need to think about those coal miners every day, because
Yeah.
they're an important part of our lives, that we don't really think about. But every time you turn a light on, there there's someone like Steve, Liscombe, and he's no longer with us.
Where is that piece?
That's in the Washington Examiner. I'm gonna,
Okay.
if you just click on to my Twitter, which is Zito Salena, it'll be on there.
Well, I will have to have you back on when we're forever doing talking politics. I'd love, like I said, I'd love to have you on Real America. I absolutely
Yeah, I'd
love
love to.
Butler. I really just couldn't put it down, and I love how you weave history into it. It wasn't just a straight. I love the feeling of moving back and forwards in time, and how you open with the George Washington, which I had no idea about. It's like exactly my kind of book. So
Oh, thank you
I hope
so much.
I loved it. I hope people go and get it's so important right now too. I mean, even with like in light of Charlie Kirk and all of this stuff, it's just I don't know. We live in May, it is interesting to me that that kind of Chinese, or I don't even know if it's actually Chinese, but the "May you live in interesting times" is actually supposed to be
Yeah,
a curse.
yeah, yeah.
But we do. We live in
Certainly,
interesting transition time, revolutionary times.
yes, we do. Absolutely do. I lived through the 60s. It feels very much that way.
What's your biggest defective character?
In the 60s?
No, in life now.
Um,
Like, what do you it can be however you interpret it. Whatever is something you are working on about yourself, something that like, I can give you an example. For me, I can be very, spiteful. It's something I've always had to work on. I can, like, hold on to it. I'm Italian, so I always joke
yeah.
that, like, there's a little mafia that awakens in my heart and is like, "You're dead to me," if somebody kind of crosses me or slights me, and I have a very hard time letting go of those things. So,
Um,
I don't know,
I
whatever
have
jumps to
that.
mind.
I have that. However, I have learned to just let it go. But I have that. Trust
Yes.
me, if you cross me, you are dead to me. You definitely are dead to me, but I will smile in your face. So, and you will never know you're dead to me, which probably is which is
That's even more terrifying.
it is. I just scared myself. I think that's my biggest, because you don't know you're dead to me. Uh, the other
Mm.
day, the other day online, I said there was a New York Times piece about Nick. How do you pronounce his name?
Fuentes.
Fuentes. Yeah, this is how online I am. And it said that he
God
was the
bless you.
next Charlie Kirk, and I said, no, he's not. That's all
No,
I
he's not.
said. No, he's not. And someone took the most awful picture of me ever taken and exaggerated it and said, "Sit down, Grandma. You're not allowed to have an opinion there." And I said, you know, that photo doesn't bother me, because I see my grandparents' face in there. I see my grandchildren's face. I see my parents' face. I am very comfortable with what I look like. Now, I didn't like what I look like in that picture. I'm a woman. We don't want to be like our faces all like distorted, right? But I was so sweet and so nice. But if you don't think that person isn't dead to me, um,
Yeah.
you didn't get what I was trying to the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you're dead to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're dead to me. You're dead to me
Yeah.
now.
In
What's
the
your biggest
nicest
asset?
way. In the
In the
nicest
nicest way
way.
possible, you're
In the
dead to me.
nicest way. Butter could melt in my mouth, as my grandmother used to say. I'm so sweet, butter could melt in my mouth. I never knew what
I
that
love
meant,
that.
but yeah.
What is your biggest asset?
Um, Listening.
Mm.
I could have a conversation with someone and barely say anything. I love to I think my secret superpower is my ability to listen. I come from a long line of news people. And my grandfather always taught me, and I think every grandparent tells this to every kid, right? You have two ears and one mouth. You should listen twice as much as you talk. Nobody cares about me when I'm out there reporting, right? Everybody has a story to tell. It's not always pretty. It's often rocky. It's there. The people are willing to share their flaws with you. Listen, they're telling you something that tells you about something about our country.
Mhm.
So that would
I
be my
love that.
superpower.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Zito Selena. I have a website. It's selenazito.com. My name's phonetically correct, SALENAZITO. And yeah, I'm a daily reporter for the Examiner, um, uh, contributor to the Washington Post. And my book, by the way, someone who did not finish college, someone who went to community college, was number one on the New York Times bestseller list for weeks. Who knew?
Who knew?
It's a
I
testament
knew.
to people. And
It is a
I'm
testament.
so grateful. I am so grateful. And they're making a movie out of it. Did I
That's
tell you that?
amazing. N
I
no.
know.
That's so
Yeah, it's,
cool.
it's in production right now.
Oh,
So
wow. When did
I
that'll be
know.
so where is it gonna be?
It's going to be in movie theaters on September of the next year, and it'll premiere at the Kennedy Center. I forget the
Oh, that's
dates. I should
amazing.
know this. It's like September 25th.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
I'm
exciting.
so weird.
Oh, I'm excited. All right. Well, I hope to have you back during a lot of the political stuff
Yeah.
coming up and on Real America. And I just love talking to you and hearing your perspective. It's so valuable. So thank you for the work that you do. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for coming on my show.
I should ask you one question. You're
Yeah.
Italian. What's your specialty
My
in cooking?
specialty?
In
Oh, I
cooking.
knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. My lasagna is I love cooking. It is my happy place. If I
Me
could
too.
just pivot to only cooking for the rest of my life, I would.
We should do a
And
cooking show.
I would love that. I would
Yes,
love
we should
to.
do that.
We should just drive around America and ask everybody to make us their specialty.
Oh, yeah. That's a great
That'd be
idea.
fun. I know, I'm full of
Your
them. I mean,
lasagna,
that's
huh?
my asset. My lasagna, I make it always for new moms in particular if they're craving it unless they don't want something. I love cooking for new moms. That was the thing that helped me the most when I had my and people who are going through like chemo or something like that. I just like cooking for people when they can't really cook for themselves.
Yep.
It is truly my love language. I love cooking for my in-laws. I would if I could, I would truly just stop everything and start just cooking full time. And yeah, my lasagna is amazing. Um, Let me ask Maggie. Maggie, what's my specialty? My beef stew, also.
Oh,
Your
beef
shepherd's
stew. Do you
pie
make
is
it in the crock
Oh,
pot?
I
amazing.
haven't made shepherd's pie in a while. What?
Do you make it in the
Do I
crock
make what?
pot, your beef stew? Or you make it in the oven?
I
Or on the
I make
stove?
it in the crock pot.
Yeah.
Well, I can make it in the oven too.
Yeah.
I just but I do yeah, I love I just love cooking, like, I love thanks I was joking, you know that meme that goes around, I don't know if you've ever seen it, that's like, "The European mind can't comprehend XYZ
Yes.
about America," and I went into HEB, my favorite of all of the grocery stores in America, and I went into HEB yesterday to get something they already have everyone's already doing their Thanksgiving shopping, and I was panicking
Yep,
because I love hosting and having
yep,
people gather around a table, and I was like, "The European mind cannot comprehend how hard America goes for Thanksgiving."
oh,
It
yeah,
was just so
yeah,
crazy. It was just floor to ceiling baked goods and
yeah,
the tins, and it's a Thanksgiving because it revolves around food is my favorite of I love Christmas now that I have a child too, but it's my
yeah.
favorite of all the holidays.
I get that. I don't feel whole unless my pantry is full and
Oh,
I can. So and I just like it to look full. It's full, which
I'm
means I
gonna
have to
send you
cook.
yes, and I like being able to cook anything, and I love curries, which means I have to have a lot of random things, and I got really
Yes.
into Middle Eastern cooking this year, so in the past couple years, so now I have all the, like, crazy spices that you need to have, and I will when we get off, I'm gonna get your phone number, and I will text you a picture of my pantry because I have the same thing. I have to have it look full.
Yes. It has to look full. I will get anxious. Like nothing gives me
Yes,
anxiety except like the amount of food that's in my house, which is ridiculous
that is
because I live alone. But
I'm the
but my
same
grandchildren are
way.
always over. Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you so
Thanks
much
for
for your
having
time. I
me.
appreciate
Thank you.
you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.